The sun, a heavy, indifferent eye, beat down on the red clay road. It was a suffocating Georgia summer in 1866, and the air was thick with humidity and the ghost of cotton dust. For Elara, 24 years old, and a woman newly made free, every breath was both a victory and a sharp, aching question. She walked with a purposeful, ground-eating stride, her old homespun dress clinging to her back. Her calloused hands clutched a leather-bound book, a gift from a Union Army chaplain who had passed through the area months earlier. It was a dog-eared copy of the New Testament, but to Elara it was simply a book of words, the most beautiful, terrifying, and necessary things she had ever encountered. Freedom, she had learned, was not a place. It was a task. It was the daily bone-deep labor of turning a life of property into a life of personhood. She had left the plantation where she had been born and where her mother was buried. She had left the only home she had ever known, and now she was entirely alone, heading toward a cluster of shacks near the outskirts of a small town called Harmony Creek. She had heard there was a school there, set up by the Freedmen's Bureau. Elara paused, watching. The sight of the children, black children, sitting upright
she couldn't
and learning
stop.
the geometry
The
of an
courthouse
A,
waited.
and the swing of
The
a
building
B
was a solid,
brought a
blocky
strange
monument
tightness
to
white
her chest
paint
and judgment.
It was a vision her
A few
mother,
white
a
men
quiet,
lounged on the
watchful
porch,
woman,
spitting
had only whispered
tobacco
about,
and
watching her approach with expressions ranging from cold indifference to outright hostility. Their eyes were like the locks on the plantation supply closet, hard, unyielding, and meant to keep her out. Elara ignored them. She crossed the manicured lawn, the simple act of stepping onto that ground feeling like an act of trespass. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of old paper and dust. She found the county clerk's office, a small room dominated by a large wooden desk. Behind it sat a man, Mr. Silas Thorne, whose spectacles perched on his nose made him look like an irritable owl. "What is it, girl?" he asked without looking up, his pen scratching furiously. Elara took a deep breath, the words she had practiced for days feeling suddenly clumsy in her mouth. "Sir," she began, her voice steady, "I am Elara Washington. I was formerly held by Mr. Thomas Greer on his land south of the river. I have come to register my name." Thorne stopped writing. He slowly lifted his head, his face a mask of patronizing confusion. "Register your name? What in the good Lord's name are you talking about, woman? Your name is Elara. Everyone knows it." "No, sir," Elara insisted, stepping closer, clutching the Bible to her chest. "That is the name they called me. My legal name. Before, I had no family name that belonged to me, only a mark on a ledger. Now I am a person. I need a family name, a legal name, so that if I own land or sign a paper or vote, it is my name and no one else's." She knew she could not yet vote, but the thought gave her words weight. Thorne chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "There's no law for that, Elara. We're in a state of chaos. The rolls are for landowners, for voters, for men. You ain't none of those things. The law of the land has changed, sir," Elara countered, her eyes meeting his. "I am a citizen under the 13th Amendment, and as a free person I have the right to claim my identity. I wish to be known as Elara Reed." She paused, letting the name settle between them. Reed. Simple. Solid. Thorne was clearly irritated by her persistence. He sighed heavily, dipping his pen into the inkwell. "Fine. A waste of my good ink, but fine. Let's get this over with." He opened a massive leather-bound ledger. It was dusty and smelled faintly of mold. He looked at her, ready to scratch his pen. "And the date, sir," Elara pressed, leaning forward. "I want the exact date of my emancipation recorded next to it, for my children, should I have any." The request was the final measure of her audacity. Thorne's hand trembled slightly as he wrote. He knew, and she knew, that for a former slave to officially record her freedom and her chosen name in a government ledger was a public, permanent act of self-ownership. It was a line drawn in the stone of American history. He finished writing, then slammed the book shut. "Done," he snapped. "Now get out of my office." Elara did not move. She simply looked at the closed book, then back at the irritated clerk. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice soft but absolute. She turned, walking toward the door. When she reached the light of the porch, she saw the lounging men had not moved. They were still watching. This time, however, Elara did not look down. She lifted her chin, her eyes fixed on the distant line of the horizon, and walked past them. She was no longer Elara, the property. She was Elara Reed, a woman with a name, recorded in the records of a free nation. The sun still beat down, but now it felt less like a heavy eye and more like a spotlight, shining on the long, difficult road ahead. The labor of freedom had just begun, but the cornerstone had been set.